Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm John Johnson.
And you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. The podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are continuing our journey into the Ultimates universe with Ultimate X-Men. And John, you'd never really read this one before, right?
No, this is one of the few Ultimate titles I don't want to say skipped, but I didn't jump in on. As much as I like the X-Men too, they definitely some of my favorite Marvel characters. But I don't know. I think I put it next to that X-Men Evolution thing because the Wolverine, some of the covers kind of look similar.
Yeah, they kind of do look like
that.
that. Look. Yeah.
But then the look inside is a little different too.
So yeah, you judged a book by its cover, literally.
I literally did. Well, they should have amazing art or really crappy art sometimes.
Hey, I'm gonna say that. How dare you say that this cover's not fine? I mean, it's not bad.
No, that covers that one. No, yeah, this
initial cover's not terrible. It's like 90, or it's because this is from 2002, so it's got the 2002 digital look, but I don't know. It's fine. They're just trying to update the X-Men, right?
Well, some things don't need updating.
Oh, okay. Tell that to this title. It sold a bunch of copies, John. Over 100,000, I'm sure.
The X-Men were sprinkled in the other Ultimates comics that we read, where I had read as far as because I got more into the Ultimates and Fantastic Four. But yeah, I hadn't sat down and read this one specifically. But I'm glad that we got into it because it was a good read.
Yes, I agree. I was actually very pleasantly surprised. This one, not that I thought it was going to be bad, but if you've read the X-Men before, it could be by the numbers. And what I liked about this was it kind of made it it took all the things, instead of just redoing the very beginning of the X-Men, it took all the cool shit about X-Men and just sped it up. It put it all in one thing. So whereas Wolverine doesn't come in until the late 70s, early 80s, they were well, fuck it, he's part of the team at the beginning. Stuff like that. They just jumped stuff and put it all at the beginning, the cool stuff, And speaking of that, we start off with the Sentinels on the first page.
Yeah.
Killing people, just fucking murdering mutants straight up, stepping on a kid and his dog because he's got mutant genes. And they say they're not pulling any punches in this comic. They literally show a person getting smashed. And his dog, and his little Toto dog. So yeah, and that's one thing. Mark Miller wrote this, and he doesn't really pull any punches. He's always looking for that bombastic, scene that makes you go what the fuck? So.
Oh yeah, and he's got that onomatopoeia on the page of getting squished, and then no blood, but the guy, he had a freezy pop or something in his hand, and that was red and spewed on the page underfoot. Kind of.
Yeah,
that.
I gotta love that.
I love it. It's good
because it's still a Marvel title, so they can't go super hardcore. Like you said, it's not blood; it's a popsicle that has spilled on him, and then also gets squished on the ground. But he obviously just got squished, so there's no there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We should also say that the art in this is actually by both Kubert brothers, Andy and Adam Kubert. So,
yeah,
as far as I know, this is the first time they've done a book together. And we've seen, I think it's Andy when we read Wolverine Origin, he did that art.
Okay.
So some of it looks penciled, and that's the one that he did, I believe. And some of it looks a little more or some of it looks inked. I'm not sure which ones he did and which ones he didn't. But sometimes there's these news, whenever the TV's on, there's this kind of pastel colored pencil look. And that for sure is Andy Kubert. Because that's what it looks like on Wolverine Origin. So But yeah, we're set up at the beginning of this with the Sentinels being a thing already, and they've been brought in by the government because of the terrorist organization known as the Brotherhood of Mutants. Like literally, they attacked. What did they attack? I can't even remember. It was like a Washington D.C. building or something.
Yeah, and they killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, they killed them. So they're like literally, instead of just threatening, the Brotherhood of Mutants is blowing shit up and like killing people. And so they built the Sentinels in response to that. And then, of course, because of that as well, all the regular humans in America and across the world are very anti-mutant at the moment because they're like, oh, these Brotherhood people kind of speak for all mutants. I don't know about you. So this comic came out after 9/11. Did you see any similarities with that? You know, like because they literally show like firemen pulling people out of burning wreckage, and it says like NYFD. So I was like, oh, this is very reminiscent of the imagery of 9/11.
Yeah, I could see that. Now that you say that, I didn't think about how close this was to that time frame, but that sounds about right. And then like,
Well, George Bush is literally in this comic, so so he's the president.
he's the president. Yeah, I know. I just
Yeah.
didn't think about the time frame in general.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then also like you could say because the Brotherhood is considered a terrorist group that this is a commentary on like at the time like saying like all Muslims aren't bad, it's just these terrorist ones, and people being like no, all Muslims are bad or something. Like there's that simile in our world at the time at least. So that I thought that was interesting because I really picked up on that when I read this, and I don't know if you did or not, but
No, I didn't pick up on the time frame. But I mean, that makes sense thinking about it, looking back on it now. I kind of went with obviously the motif of the mutants are always representative of some kind of hate group that's been hated on,
right,
some minority usually, or some uh,
class of people or something. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I was like I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah. So yeah. And then yeah, especially like you said, now I see especially with the imagery in the
Yeah, with that imagery, and then like they are a terrorist organization, and then it's like, oh no, but there's good mutants too. Like I was like, oh, this is very 2000s about like conversation about Muslims or Islam or that kind of thing. But it's hidden well, like you said, you didn't even notice it. So I guess if you don't know like the time it's put out, it just seems like, oh yeah, it's just like all X-Men comics where they're talking about mutants and normie humans or whatever. Um, so that's interesting. If you don't know the time, it still works just in general with any minority group. But it really, to me, stood out that it was like, oh, they're talking about like Islam or Muslims. So, yeah. And then this first issue is like these first couple issues are actually like getting the gang together. So we get to see, Beast being recruited. I want to call him Hank Pym. What's his actual name? It's Hank McCoy. There you go. Yeah, Hank McCoy. So Hank McCoy, he's not in his beast mode yet. He's in his human like gorilla form, like which was his first form in the original X-Men comics, where it was before. I don't know. I don't remember what happened, but he grew blue hair and everything later on. His mutation mutated further.
he tried to mess with himself, and it caused his mutation to go even further.
Okay. But we see him, and he just looks like a human with really big feet, more like gorilla features and stuff. And he could definitely use his body like a gorilla's and like pick himself up like a gymnast, kind of where he can pick himself up with his arms, like his whole body, and like kick people while standing on his hands and shit. So, but we see that he's being treated badly in a bar, and then as he leaves the bar, he gets picked up by a hot girl who is Jean Grey. She looks a little different than she does in the comics. In the comics, she usually has like long red hair and stuff, but they made her spunky in this one. They gave her short red hair.
Yeah, that threw me off at first. I was like, oh, this is Jean. Like, and every time I saw her, I was like, oh, this is Jean, because she's got she's got like the pixie haircut.
Yeah. Is that what that's called? I don't even know.
It's like a pixie haircut.
Oh,
It's like a
okay.
small short cut to the head.
Yeah, they also give her like revealing clothes and stuff a lot in this. Although I will say they did a correct thing where they like aged everybody up so it's not as creepy. You know, like like if Cyclops is dating Jean or if Wolverine is dating Jean, well, she's not 16, she's 19 in this. So at least there's that.
True. That's definitely better.
Yeah. So that was a good call on on Mark Miller's part. But we get to see her use her mind powers and where she's at with that. And she is already part of Xavier's team. She's just recruiting some new people. So she recruits right away Beast, who was an original member, and then she recruits Aurora, who's Storm, and that's a hard name for me to say. I'll say that I'm going to call her Storm from now on, just because it's hard. But yeah, Storm is like actually because she was already like this, I think, in the old comics, but like in the original X-Men comics. But in this, she's like a car thief, and then in that, she was like Queen of the Morlocks or some shit like that, like the underground mutants when they found her. So she was like a criminal before in the regular comics, but in this, she's just more like a young, like car thief.
Yeah, young kid of the streets.
Yeah, exactly. So Jean Grey breaks her out of a jail cell because she got arrested for stealing cars, and then they take off. Then we see, and this is one I didn't quite understand exactly what's happening here. We see Colossus, and he's doing some kind of drug deal where he's like buying arms or selling arms to, I don't know. They look like some kind of organization, a mob or something, and then they get fired upon, and then of course you see his steel skin get revealed, and he starts crying, and I was like, why? But they kind of explain it like, oh no, my secret is now out to everybody. Like I guess he had kept it a secret prior to this, and this was like him getting sad because now he's gonna have to leave the city and everything, because everybody knows that. Like everybody saw it. I don't know who. Like everybody on the dock saw it. So including like the people he was selling to and all that stuff. So, but Jean Grey is there and says like, "Don't worry, I got a place for you, Peter. You can come over here." So, so he stops crying and then gives Jean Grey a big hug. I felt like everybody's gonna date Jean Grey in this comic eventually, because like she's so nice to everybody, and then like everybody kind of hits on her a little bit, and then she doesn't rebuff any of them. So I just felt like, oh, okay, I guess she's like everybody's gonna date her at some point in this ultimate line of comics. So so now the team is Colossus, Jean Grey, Storm, and Beast, and then they get back to the house, the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters. And I call them youngsters, but children is what it says on the sign. and Cyclops is already there, and he's like, "Hey guys, welcome to the team." And they give them uniforms, and we see them like walking through the school, and we learn about Xavier. So this, I mean, obviously we know the X-Men, right? But like, do you think this first issue was a good introduction issue? Like, we learn about everything, like we get the team, what their powers are.
I think so, because like it didn't take too long to be like, you probably know this story, but let's run through this one more time, and it's all pretty quick. It's like, okay, there's this person, like it said their real name, and then like this is they're going to be their code name on the team, and then
right,
this is so Hank McCoy, he's going to be a beast because he looks like a beast, and so they did a good job of like getting us to this point in a really quick fashion. Without everybody, being like, oh, hey, we're buddies or whatnot. Like,
right.
Like, okay,
yeah.
Like this is, because I know that's like a big thing for you, especially when a team gets together.
Are we best friends?
Are we best friends now? And I get it, because that totally happens. But in comic form, I feel like they were able to do it well as far as like get everybody together. Not everybody's
because not everybody's friends. Like no one's friends at least at first. Like Jean Grey and Cyclops are. They're dating, but everybody else is kind of still suspicious about this whole thing.
Hank's like, why would we have like black suits, and like why do we have to have these stupid code names.
Yeah. And they also gave them suits kind of like the movies to, I'm sure, make them look a little bit like the movie versions, with black spandex instead of like bright yellow and shit.
Yeah, and what Cyclops was like, there's the materials made out of will help the Sentinels not see our like
Yeah,
X gene.
that was the excuse they said. They said it's got Kevlar in it because it's like bulletproof, and it blocks the Sentinel's ability to see you as a mutant. So that's why you need to wear these suits. So it's not like
hell yeah.
So it's not like we just want to look flamboyant and cool. It's like no, we want to protect ourselves with these fancy suits. So they all meet Charles Xavier, and I don't know. I really like this like whole setup. Like I thought. It was really quick to the like you said, it's just quick. Like here's everybody, now we're together. And then even if you have read X-Men, I thought this was a good book, like first issue of a book, because the team is completely different. So you get to see this new dynamic that you haven't seen before. Colossus came in the late 90s or late 80s too. Or no, sorry, late 70s, early 80s. I think it was maybe even like 1980 exactly. He came in the team with Giant X-Men #1. So like, and then I think Storm was there too with that. So like all of these people are newer characters that they're throwing in like it's the beginning. And so you get to see this whole new dynamic of the team. And honestly, way more badass, I think, than the original team.
I think that was kind of they went with like this is the team that most people like around this time know, because the 90s cartoon is super popular.
These are the characters that everybody loves.
Exactly, and these are like the most popular ones in the comics. So like, let's just get that as this is our ultimate line. Let's just get the cream of the crop together, basically, for our first team.
Yes,
and go from there.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of that. But that made it so it still felt new to someone who already knew X-Men pretty well. And then, so they start speaking to Xavier. He's telling them about the Brotherhood of the Mutants and Magneto, who controls them. And how they live in the Savage Land, and how he used to be part of the Brotherhood, but probably before they were called the Brotherhood of the Mutants. And he used to work with Magneto, but then Magneto did not like Magneto wanted to overthrow everything, and he did not. He wanted to work with the humans. So Magneto was the one who actually paralyzed Xavier in this by like shoving a metal spike through his spine, I guess, when he disagreed with him or tried to leave the island. And so that's how Xavier got paralyzed, which I thought was pretty fucked up. And he's still like, Eric's my brother. I'd be like, fuck you, man. You paralyzed me. Yeah. So, and then he shows him Cerebro and everything too. And that's how he's found all of them. And so that's how Jean knew where to go to find these specific ones. The next one they target, because he says, oh, there's one more I want to get for our team. Let's go get Iceman. I found him on Cerebro. Here he is. His parents have like abandoned him and he's on his own. So this is the first mission of the team. They go out to get Iceman and recruit him. And so they go to Times Square in New York. And because even though they're shielded from the Sentinels, Bobby Drake, who is Iceman, is not. And he's not Iceman yet. They haven't recruited him. But Bobby Drake is going to become Iceman. And he's on a bus. He's running away, and the Sentinels show up, and they just start murdering. I mean, I don't know how they could avoid murdering people the way they attack the bus. They like pick the bus up and just shoot it and tear it in half or whatever. Like
they go with a little like no humans like murdered afterwards or whatever. But
yeah, they say that, but
yeah, I don't know if their programming is telling the truth there because it doesn't look like it.
It's like in Terminator 2 when he gets that Gatling gun and then he like starts shooting all the cops, but he's shooting the cars only. And even though there's like hundreds of cops out there, there's no ricochets or anything that hurt anybody. And it says like 0 casualties. Like, so it's just like that. But we get to see like Storm. She's pretty young in this, but they tell her like, no, you got badass powers and you can stop them with lightning and shit. So she kind of shows off what she can do kind of on accident. She just tries it out and turns out she does have a lot of power, and she like, brings lightning and shoots these or blows up a couple of these Sentinels. There's like 10 of them though. And so then a big battle starts, and Storm actually passes out from the power that she used. And And yeah, so I mean, they're just a big fight with Sentinels. That's pretty badass. I thought it was pretty cool. And of course, there's a great scene. One of my favorite scenes of this is when the Sentinels get a hold of Cyclops, and I guess this, even though they're robots, like people talk to them like they could talk back like normal. So Cyclops is like, I know what you're thinking. You got me in your hands. I can't push the button on my visor to do a blast. But guess what? I have more than one button for my visor. And he like pushes the button in his like palm, and then he shoots the Sentinel's head off. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I like their Hank McCoy like picked up Bobby and is like trying to like escape with him, and he like there's Sentinels chasing him, and he's like jumping off of between a building. He's like, I got basically like Han Solo, like I know a few tricks or whatever, and he like jumps between two of them, makes them shoot each other. I like that. I thought that was
yeah, using strategy to have them kill each other. And then so finally, once Cyclops blows that one's head off, it's falling down. I think it's the last one. And Bobby Drake has to use his ice powers to stop it from falling and killing a bunch of people. And everybody on the team was like, wow, good job. But all the humans that were about to die are like, get out of here, you goddamn mutant. You suck. How dare you almost save us from certain death? So, or how dare you save us from almost certain death? And yeah, so they run away. I do appreciate, we see in the panel where they run away, them running down an alley, and we see a police officer just shooting after them. Just like straight up. No problems with killing anybody there. So yeah, that's like the setup for this issue is just that team getting together, and then we see a bit of Magneto down in the Savage Land, and he says at the end, like, we need to kill Xavier, bring me the Wolverine. And then we, the Wolverine, we need to give him an assignment. And so, like, okay, Wolverine works for Magneto in this book at first. This reminded me of Tommy in Power Rangers. He's a bad guy at first, but he's the coolest guy with the cool long hair. And
that's right. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see him being Magneto recruiting him first.
Yeah. So that's where the next issue starts, is Wolverine, moving, or I guess arriving at JFK International Airport. And he gets, like, immediately as he gets out of the airport, he's walking with whoever's picking him up. Like, I assume it's some guy. Like, he's called Xavier and said, like, hey, you know me, the Wolverine. I know you know I'm an assassin, but guess what? I like the cut of your jib, Xavier. Like, I want to go to your side. And so that's what he's there and under pretense for. And but this guy who's been sent to pick him up, I don't know if this guy's a mutant or anything. I don't think he is. I think he's just a human. Xavier's been like, go pick up this guy. And so he's showing Wolverine to the truck that he brought there. And we see there's already like government agents and shit on the roof ready to take Wolverine out. And they just open fire and shoot the human that he's with and shoot Wolverine and capture him. It doesn't kill him, obviously, but if you put enough bullets in Wolverine, he does have to recover. So his healing factor is not immediate.
Yeah.
And then we cut to all the X-Men learning their new powers and not new powers, but learning to work as a team with their powers and training and stuff in the Danger Room.
And I like that the Blackbird in this is a B-2 bomber.
It's got the stealth bomber style look, like that triangle instead of the Blackbird. Although the Blackbird is way cooler looking,
I will say that, I guess again, the kind of like towards the main 90s cartoon one that's kind of similar in a lot of the comics too. That one's kind of like modeled like the SR-71 a bit.
Oh, it looks like the Blackbird. Basically, right? Yeah. Is that the SR-71? I don't know what the...
Yeah, SR-71 Blackbird.
Oh, sorry, John. I don't know all this plane lingo.
Well, if you knew, no, I'm kidding. No, there was a period of time like I really liked. I liked like World War II and I liked aviation a lot, and then I was in like JROTC Navy, so learned a lot about ships and planes and.
There you go.
It's like, oh, that's cool.
Were you gonna join Top Gun, John?
I was until I was found out I was too short.
Are you? Oh, that's not true. Tom Cruise is short, and he was in Top Gun.
Exactly.
So anyway, back to the comic. So the team finds out that Wolverine has been kidnapped by the government people, and they have him in some truck, driving through New York. They're going to Canada, and Wolverine wakes up and he's like, "Oh my God, it's you, Wraith." I didn't know who Wraith was. That's not a character I know from X-Men.
Yeah, I didn't know either. They said it were with Weapon X, so I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
it's Colonel Wraith." So I was like, "Okay, is that like their version of
Stryker?"
Stryker? Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so. I could, because the next volume is called Weapon X. I can't imagine they would waste Stryker on this character, but yeah. So they have Wolverine in an adamantium cage, and so he can't get out, of course. And then, but Wraith is like, what we'll do to pass time while we're driving to Canada is we'll just like shoot Wolverine a bunch. Isn't that fun? And then he talks about how when they used to work together in Weapon X, they used to torture him like every night for funsies. So they would shoot him, or the whole battalion would like light him on fire or whatever. They would just, and I guess Wolverine would just let him because he was brainwashed and shit. So they would like do that, then wipe his mind. He wouldn't remember any of it. So like, yeah, that's the trauma or whatever that Wolverine's gone through in this. But of course the X-Men show up and they break him out after like a big fight. And luckily, Wolverine actually like gets out of there on his own, or like once they open the cage, he just jumps out, grabs a motorcycle and chases down Wraith and makes him crash his Jeep. And then Wraith is about to be killed by Wolverine, but the team stops him, and Jean Grey says, like, "Don't do it, Wolverine. You're gonna become like them if like basically humans are gonna think, we are what they think we are if you do that." So she convinces Wolverine not to do anything. Actually, no, he's gonna do it, and then she like knocks him out. She like throws him across the woods and hits him into a tree or something and knocks him out. And then they let Wraith live. I was like, really? You're just going to let him live after that? I guess she doesn't know what he did to Wolverine, over and over and over again. So, but yeah, that's how that issue ends with like, okay, they've recruited Wolverine and brought him back to the base, or at least they've knocked Wolverine out and brought him back to the base. He isn't quite recruited yet. But we do see that right away on chapter 3 opens with Wolverine killing all the X-Men. So like, it's just him fighting Cyclops and then like turning Cyclops' head and making him shoot Jean with a laser beam. Then he snaps Cyclops' neck. Then he goes after, or then Beast tries to stop him, but he stabs Beast with his claws. And then he cuts up not Cyclops, Colossus with his claws, because whatever Colossus is made of is not as strong as adamantium. So and he also kills Storm. And then it turns out when he's about to kill Xavier that they're in the danger room, and Xavier's like, "Wow, you don't have to kill you don't have to kill us in the program. It's just to train like for funsies." And he's like, "Oh, right." I'm not used to that. I'm used to having to murder everybody. And then we get a very dative joke in this too. He's talking to Beast about how awesome this like hologram danger room is. And he's like, are there any over 18 versions of the hologram deck or whatever? And Beast is like, "Oh, I'm working on it. Like I'm getting a program for Brittany and Christina going," meaning he's going to have some kind of adult content with Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears that will be available to the guys, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I thought was like, wow, that's a risque joke for a Marvel comic in the 2000s. But he got it through somehow. Maybe because they do say like over 18. They don't say anything like explicitly sexual necessarily. They just mention like Brittany and Christina program and over 18 version. But that's obviously what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best use of the danger room for sure is, It's just like nowadays with what are those things called? The visors.
VR.
Yeah, VR porn. We also see Wolverine like hitting on Jean and stuff in front of Cyclops. He gives zero fucks about this.
Yeah, he's very much like lose the zero, lose the zero, get with a hero.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
You ever been with a hairy chested man, not this like young bimbo over here?
Yeah, yeah. He does not like Cyclops, obviously, but and then in the middle of this like conversation where he's hitting on Jean, we find out that Magneto has kidnapped the president's daughter, and so they go. Apparently, they brought her to Croatia to hide her, and so the team goes there to get her. And we see they just have her in a room with like Toad and Quicksilver and the Blob, and I think Scarlet Witch is there too, and they're all just hanging out with like just eating shit and whatever with the president's daughter being there. So I was like, that's not too bad.
It was kind of interesting. They're just kind of there in like a hotel room. There was one thing I thought was interesting. We saw like a little panel of Magneto like telling Wolverine, to infiltrate, what his job is there, infiltrate and then kill Charles.
Right.
But he did say something, and this I was wondering if you could clarify. He said that, because Charles can read everyone's mind. He's one of the most powerful mutants.
Yes.
But there's something in Wolverine that he can shield it.
It's not because of the adamantium. It's because his mind has been wiped so much from Weapon X, and false memories have been implemented in there or implanted in there. So his mind is just completely unreadable because it's just scattered memories of nothing, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So it's so like broken or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of like Bucky Barnes, like when he was Winter Soldier. It's like he doesn't know what he was doing and he doesn't remember any of it, but he was like an assassin and all that shit. So
yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. They didn't explicitly say that, but I got that over. There was a couple times when they mentioned Weapon X and what they did to him, and that's why his brain was unreadable. At least unreadable so that you could like figure out what's going on inside of it. I imagine for like a mind reader, it would be like a maze or something, right? Like they can't find what his actual thoughts are because it's in this crazy maze of, broken mind memories and stuff. So
that makes sense.
That's how I pictured it, but maybe I'm wrong. So the team shows up in Croatia. They break into the hotel room, immediately start fighting the Brotherhood of the Mutants. We get some cool fight scenes with Quicksilver and Cyclops, and just seeing what they can do. We also see Quicksilver running really quickly and then almost being stabbed and impaled by Wolverine, who just like took a piss while this fight was going on, and then he comes out behind an alley and like snicked and like puts his claws out right as Quicksilver is about to run into him. And then Quicksilver sees him and is like, "What are you doing here?" And obviously Quicksilver doesn't really like him that much, but he does know that Wolverine is there to not be part of the team. He's there to assassinate Xavier eventually. So they do. Do they actually get the girl? I can't remember if they actually get the. Yeah, they save the daughter. They save the daughter.
Yeah, Beast saves no, Wolverine. I'm sorry.
Wolverine grabs the car that she's in and drives off a cliff, and then the B-20 or the B-2 bomber, opens its door underneath it, and the car flies into it. So they do save the president's daughter. Luckily.
Yeah, and I love when he get inside and he's like, "You ever seen someone get saved like that?" He's still hitting on Jean every chance he gets.
Every time, yes.
Yeah.
But
Beast does get hurt pretty bad.
Yeah. So Beast was actually injured pretty badly in this, big battle. Because it was against the Brotherhood of the Mutants. They're not pushovers. So he actually is like his body's in a bunch of rubble that's burning, and Aurora finds him, and then they take him out of Croatia, but not before Cyclops actually gets shot, because the townspeople, now that the Brotherhood of the Mutants leave, they begin shooting at them because they're like, "Get out of here, you freaks. You caused us all this stuff." And they're like, "No, it wasn't us. We saved the president's daughter." And they're like, "No, you didn't. We don't like you, you fucking freaks." So they actually shoot Cyclops, and that's where we learn that the suits are bulletproof too, not just sentinel blocking. And so as they're fighting, all of a sudden a train falls down in the middle of the square and blows up, and I imagine kills a bunch of people because there's a bunch of humans underneath these train like bridges that he brings them down. So Magneto actually lifted this train in the air, brought it down. He gives a big speech about like, why do you care about these people? They're fucking losers. They don't like you. And then, he just walks away. He's like, he walks away into the mist like, you know what? Like, no one tries to stop him either. I thought that was pretty weird. There was no like fight there either.
Well, I think he realized like they're kind of injured too anyway. So he's like, y'all.
Well, I understand why he doesn't fight them, but why don't they try to fight him?
Because half of them are injured. They're not at full strength.
All right.
They gotta regroup.
All right, I guess so.
Cyclops is the leader. I get it.
That's true. He did get shot, so maybe he wasn't feeling up to it. So anyway, they let Magneto go after he like murders a couple people in Croatia, and then we come back to the Xavier Institute for Gifted Children, and we see Beast is under medical surgery. He's getting surgery by Jean Grey and Professor Xavier, and they're doing it like telepathically with like needles and knives and shit. So, and then like I love like is it Wolverine or Cyclops? It's like it's a Colossus who's like, how are they doing that? And then because like they're not surgeons, and then they're saying like, oh, it's like they basically have all the surgeons in the area like within 50 miles or something that they're feeding off of, so they have all their knowledge while they do this. So they're the best surgeons in the 50-mile radius because they have every surgeon's knowledge. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
definitely beefed up his stuff, like his powers, at least from the if you compare it to the first issue of X-Men, the original X-Men. But yeah, so then we see they gave Beast some kind of fancy treatment that was like not approved by the FDA, but they're like, he needs it. And we think this will work. And there's only like a couple animals that have had weird reactions where like their fur turns blue. No big deal, but that happened to like 0.001%. So no, I'm sure it won't happen to Beast. Which of course we all know that does happen to Beast. So this is
what
probably
are you talking about?
This is obviously the catalyst for his transformation later on. Because even when he wakes up, all of a sudden his hair is blue and shit. So and he's like, what's going on? But he's not all hairy all over his body. It's just his hair turns from black to blue. And then we see Wolverine walk in as Jean Grey administers the last shot or whatever to Beast. And then he's like, want to go for a walk, toots? And then he takes it for a walk. And he's walking around shirtless with just a vest on, like a leather vest, as you do.
It made me think of like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, like straight up. That is what he's wearing. And he's walking with Jean Grey and they're talking. And then he's like, she asks him like, are you really here, to be with us? Like, are you actually on our side? I never know. Like, I can't really trust you. And then I can't remember exactly like what is said, but she's basically just like, I really, really wish I never met you. And he's like, so how come you find me so attractive? He just says it. So how come you find me so attractive? And she's like, I wish I knew. And then bites her lip. And then the next panel is them making out. And they're like in this garden. And Scott can see them in the window as he looks down on the garden. He just happens to be walking by and sees them making out. But Wolverine knew. He turns around and sees that Scott was in the window just like he knew it was going to happen. So obviously Wolverine is plotting. And Colossus then goes down and has a big fight with Charles and says like, I don't know about this whole thing. I think I'm leaving.
Scott goes down.
I'm sorry. Who did I say?
You said Colossus.
I'm sorry. Scott goes down and has a fight, and is like, I'm leaving because his girlfriend is just making out with someone else. And
well, I was gonna say he's testing because his girlfriend's making out with someone else, but he's like, yeah, I just don't know,
well, he was kind of moved by Magneto's speech at the end there, the last battle they had, and then also. He saw the reaction of the people in the town, even though they obviously saved the president's daughter. And he got shot.
Just don't care about us.
He got actually shot, which, yes, it was bulletproof, spandex or whatever, but that still fucking hurts. So,
yeah, that's one thing Magneto said, and that was one thing. the more and more I see of Magneto and like see actual stories where he's like the main, the more and more I do like think he's becoming one of my favorite villains.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the more and more you agree with him.
The more I love him. No, but like he was talking, he's like, yeah, like you're gonna be, uh, you're gonna work with Xavier. Like you're expendable to him, basically. Like he doesn't care if you get shot. He doesn't care if you get, these things happen to you.
Yeah.
And I see, like, like you said, well, Scott's already kind of like, there's so much shit going on here, and that's just one
And
more
the,
thing.
the last straw was his girlfriend making out with Wolverine. He's like, fuck that shit. So yeah, he's leaving, and then Xavier, tries to stop him again, tries to talk him out of it. He says like, hey, actually what we did do something, because the president has agreed to stop the Sentinel program. Because his daughter's back, and that was awesome. And, some like peace talks are kind of happening. So we are making headway. We're just took a while, and it's going to be an uphill battle kind of thing. And then he does something, and I'm sure they do this for a reason. Like they set it up for future storylines, but Xavier starts messing with his brain. He says all of a sudden Cyclops is like, oh, what are you doing to me? And then, Professor is like, oh, don't worry. Like, I'm just releasing some like happy hormones in your bloodstream because I could tell you were going to get mad. So I just preempted that with like flooding your brain with serotonin or whatever. That's like super fucked up actually. Like it doesn't seem that big of a deal here, but I know later on, like in X-Men, there is storylines where he is just mind wiping people at will. Like, at willy-nilly moments when he's yeah.
Xavier would never do that.
Ever. He'd never do that. So this is like the setup for that. And so he leaves, and Cyclops actually takes their plane, which I was like, that's not your plane. You don't get to take the plane. But he did. He took the X-Men plane and then flew it all the way to the Savage Land, landed there, and says, I want to be with you guys. I can't remember when we learned exactly, but we do learn that, Quicksilver asks Magneto, like, hey, how come Wolverine hasn't fucking killed the professor yet? Like, he had a couple opportunities. And Magneto's like, well, I mean, we've worked with Wolverine before, and usually if he doesn't complete the mission right away, it's because he wants to have sex with a lady. And so that's like the only reason he's not killed Xavier, is because Jean Grey, he wanted to get with her. So then we start off the next issue with the Brotherhood of the Mutants. Now they're empowered. They have Cyclops with them. And he has the plane too. So the fucking plane they're using as well to bomb London. They've literally blown up sections of London and attack it.
To be fair, Scott isn't down with killing people still. He just doesn't want, like...
Yeah, he's like, you can line the bridges with bombs and the buildings and stuff. Just make sure they have a 15-minute head start to say like, hey, get out of the building. And as we all know, when fire alarms go off in buildings, everybody leaves and gets out very quickly. There's no one lagging behind, I'm sure.
No, and then plus Quicksilver, like, I think triggers them ahead of time.
He triggers them in 3 minutes. So of course nobody got out of the fucking buildings probably. So they attack London, and then in the meantime we cut to Washington D.C. where I guess the mutants are staying in Washington D.C. now because they are having talks with the president, and exactly. And so Wolverine is sharing a room with Jean Grey. They've obviously had relations, and they're in a relationship now, and they see what's going on in the news and they're like, oh my, we should probably do something about that. And then like Wolverine's like, yeah, we should do something, and then they like continue having sex. So then we cut to the White House where Xavier's supposed to meet with the president, and this is where we see it's George Bush as the president. When the second I saw he was the president, everything I read in his dialogue was in his voice. Yeah. Everyone pretty much agrees with me. So, but yeah, even though the Brotherhood is bombing Britain right now, or London, he's still like willing to talk because he knows that that's the bad guys, even though they're attacking with Xavier's plane and with Cyclops, and they can see them on video doing so. So And then at the same time,
he was going to have talks, but then once that bombing happened in Scott, they saw the plane go there. They were able to figure out exactly where the Brotherhood was hiding in the Savage Lands. Like
yeah. So
exactly.
because Scott took the Xavier's plane or the X-Men plane to the Savage Land, the president was like, I'll still talk to you about the normal, we're not going to have Sentinels just go around killing people randomly. But I have to send the Sentinels because we tracked your plane to the Savage Land and we know that's where the terrorist organization is now. So we're going to send the Sentinels there at this moment and just destroy everything. So they do that. The Sentinels get released. They start heading to the island, to Savage Land, and at this time, like they get back, Cyclops and the Brotherhood. They get back, and then Cyclops is like, "I need to talk to you, Magneto. Like, what the hell? You said this wasn't going to be like a killing mission, but obviously people died, and like I'm not cool with that." And Magneto tries to play it off like, "No, it's fine. Don't worry." Like Quicksilver, he's just he's a fast guy. Like his heartbeat beats like 25 times a second. What are you going to do? It probably felt like 15 minutes to him, but it was only 3 minutes to us. He tries to write it off, basically. But then he says something weird, which is also like foreshadowing, I'm sure, for like the future. He says to Cyclops, "Hey, tonight when we like hang out at the dinner that we're going to like celebrate what we did, would you mind like calling me father in front of Quicksilver? That would be cool." And like I assume Cyclops was like, "Yeah, I guess so, weirdo."
It's weird, but all right.
Yeah, sure, why not? So that's like, and you can see it's like a sinister look on Magneto's face as he says this. So it's like him trying to piss off Quicksilver. And then we see Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are talking, and they're brother and sister, if you didn't know. And they're also the children of Magneto. So they're talking about how much, or Quicksilver's talking to her about how much his dad hates him, and how like Magneto thinks that they're like his only, like the one time he had a weakness with a human is when he had sex with their mom and then gave birth to them, so they're a constant reminder of his weakness, stuff like that. And that's obviously why like they're why Magneto is trying to manipulate Quicksilver. Like he wants him in his control at all times. So then the Sentinels arrive and begin murdering everybody in this fucking place. Like literally just tearing down all buildings and everything. And I thought this part was cool, but I wasn't exactly sure how this happened. So the Sentinels have been made, they say, of chromium in order to not be magnetized, right? Because chromium isn't magnetic. But somehow Magneto is able to lift them off the ground and like take them apart. So the only thing I could think is maybe their outer shell is magnesium, but their inner shell isn't, or their inner stuff isn't, or chromium, I mean. So yeah,
It's got to be, because he said he's able to like rewire them, so it's got to be like the internals. And I guess they figured if they had a shell of that, he couldn't like see through that. But he is the master of magnetism. Of course, he can feel the metal inside of them.
yeah. So what he does is he rewires them to only attack humans. So, and then he sends them to Washington D.C. So, or actually, he sends them to America, but I guess they go to Washington D.C. first.
I love this because Scott's like, "No, what are you doing? Like, you can't do this." He's like, "You're gonna basically, genocide people." He's like, "Oh, we're just starting with America," and he's like, "Well, you're as bad as Hitler." He's like, "Yeah, Hitler was Hitler was a I don't
Hitler was one of them, is what he says.
yeah, Hitler was one of them." So
yeah, he's saying like, "No, I'm not one of them. I'm protecting us from Hitler's," is what he's saying. Which I mean, to be fair, they are trying to exterminate all mutants. So hey, if Jews had superpowers in World War II, do you think Hitler would have been around for a long time? I don't think so.
If Magneto hadn't been a child in World War II,
yes,
things would have been different.
Yes, they actually do have a scene where they cut to a concentration camp of sorts, but they don't really reference World War II because I guess that would make Magneto fairly old at this point. He would be at least like 70 or something. So, but no, he would have to be like 70 or 80 at that point. So, Yeah. So then Cyclops is like, no, we can't do this. And he pulls out a little beacon and he pushes it. And it turns out that it talks to Xavier. And he's like, hey, Cyclops or Professor X, this is Cyclops. We've got a situation here. So then we start the next issue with Jean Grey. I guess Wolverine has just told her that he was sent there to kill Xavier, but she's so good in bed, I'm assuming. he is so smitten.
Yeah, she changed his mind, basically.
Yeah, she rocked his world. She knows how to lay it down, and she convinced him otherwise, we'll say. She convinced him that Charles Xavier is the way to go with her body. And but he's like, I don't understand, babe. Like, I just told you I changed my mind. You changed my mind, and I'm on your team now. Yeah, I was here, and I lied at first, but guess what? That changed when I met you.
Yeah, she's beating the crap out of him with her psychic powers. And he's like, I don't understand, babe. What's going on?
Yeah. But then Xavier stops that fight and says, like, hey, you two, stop fucking and get over here. There's Sentinels coming. It's bad. So then we come back to Savage Land and we see Scott Summers is trying to figure out how to get to, America in time because he's super far away and he's only got the one plane and he's already behind the Sentinels who are probably flying at the same speed the plane would. So he's not going to get there in time, he thinks. So he has Quicksilver run him there. Is that correct? He says, like, I believe he's like, come on, Quicksilver. Like, you want to show your dad, how much you don't like him? Show him how much you don't like him by taking me there faster than the Sentinels can get to everywhere. So he does that. But the Sentinels do arrive in New York or in Washington, D.C., and they begin shooting all the famous monuments you know of, the White House and all that shit. So, and, the X-Men are there. They're fighting them. The humans are fighting them. But the X-Men are fighting them even though they're not really killing X-Men now. They're not killing mutants. They're killing all these people. So it doesn't look like the Sentinels are even trying to fight back with the mutants.
Now they're just trying to kill people more. Yeah, because it looks like Storm's like blasting him and that one's still like, I'm going to stomp on these people.
Yeah, like he doesn't care about the mutants attacking him. So it seems like their only directive now is just kill all humans, like Bender or whatever. So, we get to see like they've definitely progressed in their powers. Like they've definitely trained over the last couple months. And we see Storm can like make, what do they call it? Like ball lightning or whatever. Yeah, ball lightning. I guess it's like something that can just form without having to have storm clouds and shit. It's just like static electricity in the air, balled up, and then a big blast of it. So she can take them out from far away, so it's not necessarily scary to her anymore. And then we see Magneto is on the White House lawn. He's broadcasting to everyone in America as the White House burns behind him. And he's saying, like, look at your president. I made him lick the dirt off my boots. And, like, you see President George Bush is on his knees on the grass, and he's, like, in a fetal position, and he's naked in front of Magneto as Magneto burns an American flag, and the White House and everything next to him. So, yeah. And then he brings a car down. He's going to kill the president on live TV. And right as he does that, all of a sudden the car splits in two. I thought this was a really, really cool shot. What do you think of this shot, John?
Oh yeah, this was fantastic. I love it. He's like, yeah, basically the world is going to learn to either you're all are going to perish or the rest of you are going to
be our slaves.
Be our slaves, yeah, basically. And yeah, when it cuts perfectly in half, it's like, oh shit, that's got to be Charles, right?
Yeah,
and yeah, sure enough.
Yeah, so what he has is the limousine is hanging in the air above the president, like nose down. So it looks like it's just going to smash directly into the president. But at the last second, the car splits in half, like vertically. And like basically the shell comes off of the chassis. And then they split far enough so that it doesn't hit the president. It lands on either side of him. And that was, like you said, Charles Xavier using his mind stuff on him. And then, Magneto and Xavier start fighting. And obviously Magneto is protected with his helmet from Xavier's mind stuff. So right away, Xavier's knocked to the ground out of his chair. Magneto's like, I'm going to do more to you than just fucking break your back this time, Charles. I hate you. and they have this big like thing, and then right when Magneto's about to kill Charles on live TV, Wolverine sneaks up behind him and stabs him through the chest, and then there's a couple of other finishing moves where he stabs him a couple more times, like he slashes him in the chest a couple times. So, um, and then Magneto's not out though. Like I'm not quite sure how Magneto survives this. Literally, he gets stabbed like in the middle of the chest, like where his heart would be. Then he gets slashed across the rib cage with the adamantium claws a couple times, and then like Magneto's able to take, I don't know, like a metal cylinder and shove it into his back and like knock him out.
Shove it into Wolverine's back.
Yeah, Wolverine's back and knock him out. And so that at least stops that. But he's bleeding all over, like, so it's like you died, right? Like 100%. And then we see Magneto says like, I guess he does like a flash of something right when when he sees like he's gonna lose, like he's gonna die. Magneto's like does some finishing move. We don't really know what it is until we see all of a sudden all the nuclear weapons in America, like he has tapped into the network that controls them and he has launched them. So all these nukes are going to get launched. I don't know if it's all of them or just like a specific one or two, but
I don't know if it's the ones just like in the certain vicinity, but basically, yeah, it's like some kind of like magnetic like pulse wave he sent out that like he said short circuited them all and like made them all go off in that, in like I said, at least in that area.
yes. So now nukes are being launched. They're going to kill a bunch of people, of course. And Quicksilver sees this and he's like, I'm not going to let my dad. I'm gonna show my dad. You know, like I'm gonna be like Scott Summers and be a straight arrow. So he runs as fast as he can and takes Magneto's helmet off, and that allows Charles Xavier to get into his head and basically drive him crazy. And then he makes Magneto use his magnetic powers to like make a vortex of magnetic energy that like so Magneto starts hovering in the air and everything metal gets pulled into him into like a giant ball, including the warheads. And he just basically sends that into the atmosphere. So Magneto, for all intents and purposes, is blown up in this, you know, ball of metal and magnetism when the bombs hit it. Correct? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I mean, no, that's what it seems like.
Okay. I was like, wow, they killed Magneto in like the first 6 issues. That's pretty crazy.
I'm sure he survived somehow because you know it's comics. There's always you know they're not always dead.
Yeah. So that's pretty much like the big you know ending to this, and then we get like, you know, back at the house afterwards, and we see that Wolverine is telling everybody he's leaving. He's telling Jean Grey, you know, I gotta leave, babe. I gotta leave, babe. I can't stick around just for you. And so she's not liking that, of course. And Scott Summers is very happy to hear that Wolverine is leaving. But it seems like everybody's, you know, very happy. Except at the very end, him and Charles and Summers are talking outside as they drink some champagne. And Charles says, like, oh, there'll be plenty of other times like what we just went through. After all, eliminating the Sentinels, opening the door to Magneto's Brotherhood, and gaining the trust of Homo sapiens was just phase 1 of our little master plan. Phase 2 promises to be a lot more interesting. And then we see the next issue, or the next volume, is called Weapon X. And so I don't know what he has planned, but it seems like maybe Charles is sinister in this one. We did see him fuck with people's brains earlier. So maybe he's not on the up and up like he was in the first original X-Men comic, you know?
Yeah, I love that we got this right at the end. It was just like a perfect little like breadcrumb of like, oh fuck, what the hell?
Well, not only the two things, right? We have that, you know, reveal of Xavier having some master plan, which is sounding sinister. Then we have next Weapon X. Well, fuck, I want to know what this world's Weapon X is like, you know? So like like that, it's just like two good things that make you instantly want to read the next volume. So so that was Ultimate X-Men. And with that being said, John, what would you give it and what did you think?
I liked it a lot. Like you said, the initial cover art threw me off a little. I wasn't as like fond of Wolverine's look, and like I said, maybe that was a little bit of bias to me. Like I said, I love the '90s
You're
X-Men,
judging a book by its cover. You don't do
yes,
that.
but I didn't like X-Men Evolution, and I didn't like some of the changes in that digital art. But then, like I said, once I got into this comic, I liked it. Like I was fine with everybody's character designs were pretty similar. It still felt very true to the nature of the characters and whatnot
Yeah, for
in
sure.
general.
Even with the little
Um,
tweaks of like Xavier being evil and stuff, because he has been evil later on, or at least not evil, but like he's doing stuff that you shouldn't do if you're a good guy, like fuck with people's minds and stuff like that.
exactly. Yeah, like both him and Magneto are gonna try to do something for the greater good. Magneto just happens to be the greater good of like mutant kind, and Xavier's like, oh yeah, I want to do this for everyone, but that always puts somebody out on the edge. You can't please everyone. So
Right. Yeah.
or help everyone. So yeah, but I like that. Like I said, like the end breadcrumb of like they're in the sunset and it's him and he's like, Scott, you're the leader. Like we did good, kid. Like that was great. We took out Magneto and like saved the day. Oh, by the way, yeah, like that was just phase one. I love that. The ending really like stuck it to me
Yeah.
to like kind of put this up just a little bit more than, like I said, like kind of the standard X-Men story. I think it did so many little things so well.
It was all the little things, right? Like all these little additions, like tweaking it just a little bit to make it more interesting for the new generation,
It was just all those little things in particular. Like I said, sticking the ending like that with like an awesome battle, an awesome finale, and then yeah, this little like what. So I loved it. I thought it was really good. I think I liked it more than the Avengers, the Ultimates
Really?
Avengers that yeah, I think I did. Which is odd because like Captain America is always my favorite. And I love Cap in those too. Like Ultimates Cap is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just I liked everything about this. I liked Meg. Like I said, the more I read stories where Magneto is actually the bad guy, the more I really enjoy him. And I'm like, he's such a good bad guy.
Well, it's because he's got like the you understand his plight. Like you could very much see anybody becoming Magneto if they were put in Auschwitz and then treated the same way by humans after he got mutant powers.
Yeah, I'm this close to buying one of those. They have the
helmet.
Oh yeah, man. They have the Hasbro does like the Star Wars helmets, and I think they have like Power Rangers, and they've done I think like Iron Man and Spider-Man and Black Panther. But this is the first X-Men or main non-movie one they're doing, and they're doing Magneto's helmet, and I'm like this close to getting it.
Nice.
I don't know, it's cool. It's got a little stand and stuff. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna give this one I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Oh wow.
Really,
yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
That's good. Yeah. I'm gonna give this one a 7. I enjoyed it. I definitely want to read the next one. It was to me like it still felt like a standard comic, like a regular Marvel comic, which you know me and how I feel about Marvel. So I like it pulled punches, which Ultimates did not do. And I think because this was actually the first title. I don't know if you knew that or not. This was the first Ultimates title.
Mm-mm.
This and Spider-Man, I think, were launched at the same time. And then Fantastic Four, and then Ultimates. So I think when they kind of established the tone of Ultimates, the Ultimate line later, that's why you get Ultimates, and it's just right out of the gate, super violent, super fucked up, like way more so than this was. In this, there was like sex, but like Marvel sex, where it's like, oh, we're in a bed, slightly disheveled looking, like. But like everything's covered. There are no bad words or anything. Like I said, they're hinting at porn in the danger room, but it's over 18 content. Like that's what they call it. So it still felt a little hindered by that. as opposed to where the Ultimate line goes to. And then eventually the Ultimate line just crosses the line completely when Mark Millar leaves, and I think Jeff Loeb takes over on Ultimates, and you get like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver having an incestuous relationship and all this crazy shit like that. So,
whoa,
yeah, but like that's like when it jumped the shark. But before that, it was like, oh wow, this is different, and it's pretty violent and pretty like adult for a Marvel comic, and that made it feel cooler to me, at least, because I was a big fan of the Marvel Max line of comics, which was their adult version. So that was like Punisher, where like he's saying F-bombs, he's literally just murdering people on screen and everything, like blood and guts and everything. There was no pulling back on that. And those are like probably my favorite Marvel titles, because they remind me of like Vertigo. Like in DC, you had Vertigo and you could do anything. Like the shit that's in Hellblazer is like harder than anything Marvel's ever published. And that's like the first 10 issues of Hellblazer. Like, so, and that was like in the 80s. So like, I feel like Marvel really they have an issue like really going full tilt into more mature content or more dark stuff, even when they're rebooting a line for the modern audience and shit, you know? So, that was like, I could just feel like there is a bit of that holding back in this. And even for Mark Millar, who's pretty well known to be like write super fucked up big scenes that like are like what the fuck revelations usually and stuff, and I think this has that, but not in his style. Like this little last scene is definitely one of those revelations where Xavier's like, phase 2 will be more interesting, I have a master plan. And then like some of those other scenes were like when Cyclops leaves and goes to the Savage Land, stuff like that would be a bigger reveal and maybe have more fucked up parts attached to them, you know, like reasons why he would leave.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, I just thought, oh, it's pulling punches. But I would totally recommend this. Like if you've never read X-Men and you kind of want to get like all the good parts of X-Men that took 30 years to hit in one sitting, you know, like this is a good start. Like right away we get the new team. We get the first team, but it's the new team that's first team of, you know, Wolverine and Colossus and Storm. Those are like 3 of my favorite characters, and they're all on the team now, you know, like right away. There's no bullshit about, you know, oh, we got to take 30 years to like for someone to come up with Wolverine and then be like, oh, maybe we'll use him on X-Men, you know. So I think they did a really good job of rebooting it for this Ultimate line, and I think they picked the right writer too. He you know, that Mark Millar, I think he's going places.
I don't know. Something tells me I like his moxie.
Yeah. Something about him. And I think this was like the first thing he ever wrote for Marvel. And before this, I think the only thing he'd ever written was Swamp Thing. And oh no, he wrote The Authority. That was like his big thing. When so Warren Ellis wrote the first 2 volumes of Authority, and then Mark Millar took over after him. And that was like when it was really popular and people started taking notice of Mark Millar at that point. And then Marvel was like, we want you to leave Wildstorm and come work for us. We're doing this new Ultimate thing and we like the cut of your jib and like the way you do stuff. So, and then Mark Millar even said like, oh, I didn't really read Marvel when I was growing up because he's a DC guy like me. And so he's like, I didn't know like Wolverine wasn't super strong and shit. So like there's a scene probably later on in the next volume where Wolverine like picks up a car over his head, and he's just like, and he's like, I didn't know that Wolverine wasn't like super strong because I've never read X-Men. So, but it kind of made it feel like, oh, like we're rebooting, and he doesn't know what the powers are. So it kind of gave it freshness because he might do something different that people wouldn't have thought of because he doesn't quite know all the characters 100%, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. And you don't want to do that all the time. You don't want to do it the main line. But like you could do that with like an imprint like Ultimates or, you know, or even like Vertigo or something where you're changing what the status quo of the titles are. Then, okay, yeah, bring someone in who might not know everything about the character, and then you have, then you can like get some fresh ideas in there, you know? So.
For sure. And I like kind of like, I wish that there were more comics that did the line like the Batman one you were telling me about, the, was it Batman Legends of the Dark Knight?
Yeah, Legends of the Dark Knight.
Yeah, where you have yeah, like you could have these different creators come in and it's like, hey, I'm gonna tell my story in like, 3 to 6 issues or whatever. And like it doesn't have to connect to anything else. It's just like my take on something Batman. I wish that more of like because like the Ultimates line, I know this was like a whole run, but I just think that that would be cool in general if you had more of that in all lines of them and all kind of like
Well,
the
Marvel
major
used to
characters.
have they used to have Marvel Comics Presents, which was just that, where they'd have different writers every arc, and it would just be whatever you want to tell of the Marvel universe, and that's where we got the fucking Barry Windsor Smith story, Weapon X. Like that's the one that we read was from that anthology series.
I forgot that was an
That was
anthology.
he made that up. He made up what Weapon X was, what happened to Wolverine there. That was all his mind, and
And
it was
now
for
it's
that. Yeah, and now it's canon.
and yeah, now Marvel's like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, like I think those really let people be creative, and I think you're right. It would be cool if they had those, but people the problem is anthology series like that don't really sell too well. Unless you have like really good writer teams and artist teams on them. So um, that's the problem is they don't want to pay writers and artists for that kind of stuff. So
You're telling me that these companies in comics and in TV and in movies don't want to pay their writers or
well,
artists?
John, if you think about it,
You're-
they're all this same company now. So it's
That's
WB
true.
and Disney who are, but you can't have comics writers in the strike because they're not part of the WGA. And then also there's a weird thing with comics, like if writers were like comic writers were part of that, well then where do the artists stand on that? Because there's no artists in that guild. So then you have to have a separate organization that the artists are represented by, and there's like a whole fucking there would be a whole thing. It just makes it because the way comics is, it's a together thing. It's a artist and a writer together. It really muddies how you would have anything like that. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but yeah. So I give it a 7. You give it an 8.5. We both recommended though. So if you have any inkling to read, an X-Men book where you don't quite know everything, you just know some characters. Maybe you watched the animated show when you were a kid. Definitely check out Ultimate X-Men. It's definitely a updated version it's updated for the time it came out, and it really feels like a good starting point for anybody who's kind of familiar but doesn't have the money or the want to read old Jack Kirby and Stan Lee books. Because I believe me, I love Jack Kirby's art, but goddamn Stan Lee, I can't read his stuff from the '60s. It's at the moment that might change. I go through periods where I'm like, oh, you know what? Actually, I can read all that stuff. But I tried to read Fantastic Four, and I was like, oh my good god, like this is not
No,
for
I
me.
feel you. I've tried to do that with some of the older ones, and it is difficult. Like I mean, it can be nice to like see where things came from, and if you can see the art on the page,
Yeah, if you
really
can see the
enjoy
art through the word
some of that.
balloons.
Yeah, that's the thing. I love that we have enough of prints and posters and like those images that they pulled from that so you can actually like see some of that amazing art
Uh huh.
because there's some really beautiful stuff that is covered up by gigantic word bubbles.
Yes. So yeah, I think this is a good place to jump on if you like one, especially with like the other ones too, like Ultimates or Fantastic Four. If you are at all interested in those characters, this Ultimate line tends to be like the greatest hits from the 60 years of comics put into one, new universe and all like condensed and everything. So I think that works well for introducing people to stuff. Um, so yeah, and next this month is Pride Month, so we're doing for our voted poll from Patreon. We're voting on a couple pride centric books, I guess, or LGBTQ uh, books that they either have gay characters in them, or they have or are by LGBTQ writers. So that's kind of like how we're doing it this time. And a couple of them are like original ideas. Like we have a book called Heathen that's like a Boom Studios book, I believe. That's I'm not exactly sure what it is. I've heard of it, but I haven't really looked into it too much. But that is, I think it's about a gay character, and it is written by a gay author, I believe too. Then there's like a more indie book called Spinning. That's by Tilly Walden, who did recently she did the newest continuation of the Walking Dead video game series, but in a comic book, which was fantastic. It's called Clementine. I recommended that one. So this is like one of her indie books that she put out. That's like a more, I think it's biographical. So, and then we have Stumptown, which is like a detective crime comic that takes place, I believe, in Seattle. And then we have Gotham Central, which is, as you might have guessed, a Batman comic, but it doesn't have Batman in it. It's all about the police that work in Gotham. And it specifically focuses on Renee Montoya, who you might remember from the animated series, who's like the Latina cop. But she, this is the series where the volume, at least, where she was retconned, I guess, to be gay. Because she was always in the background in the main comic, and this was the first one that really focused on her. So we get to learn about her personal life, and this is where we find out that she's gay. So she's one of my favorite characters, and not only because she's awesome in the animated show, and Gotham Central is a fantastic comic, but she becomes the Question later, and goddamn them for not really doing anything with her. But I like the idea of her being the Question once they get around to actually writing a good story. That would be nice. But
listen up, DC. Get on this.
Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, those are the 4 ones you can vote on. And John, of course, will put the link to each book so you can read exactly what they're about on the poll. But if you would like to vote on those and be a Patreon member, you can go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And you can sign up there to a couple of different tiers that we have. And once you're there, once you join, you can vote every month on our second episode, and you get an extra special episode, an exclusive episode just for Patreon members. And speaking of Patreon members, I'd like to thank our patrons, Hoku, Otaku Mike, Christian, Matthew, Kyla, and Sandy. We thank you very much. You guys are awesome. And like we said, if you'd like to join our Patreon, you can join at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, at gmail.com.
We really appreciate y'all very much. And don't forget about all our social media. We got Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. We got lots of exclusives on there. Matt's always cranking them out. I will eventually, once we get some things taken care of. But I know I've been saying that. But yeah, we really appreciate y'all. That keeps the lights on and keeps the backup now for all of our huge library of episodes.
Yes,
so
yes.
We really appreciate y'all.
Yep. And unless you got anything left, I think we're good to go.
Yeah, I'll just say we are going to, I think we're going to do, we're going to take some time off coming up here soon, but we are going to do at least the Ultimates. Are we going to do Spider-Man or Fantastic Four still?
We're going to do Fantastic Four next, and then we're going to take August off. Just as a break, just take a little break in the middle of the year. Just to give us a break. We do a lot of stuff with these podcasts. We have the Hellblazer one, the Swamp Thing one, this one, the exclusive one. So got a lot of stuff going on, and also the YouTube videos and stuff I do. So just needed a little break in August, but we will still be doing the exclusive Patreon podcast. So if you want to catch something in August, you can join Patreon for that.
That's true. Don't think, you're not going to go empty-handed just because we're taking a little hiatus from the main podcast for a month.
Yes.
But either way, again, thank you guys for listening, and I guess we'll see you on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.